Hi everybody, I'm Sutton with Bunny Hill Designs, and I'm here at Quilt Market 2013 Fall, and I have a new redwork line out called Winter Wonderland. I'm hoping all of you are going to love it, because what we've done with the redwork line is we've brought back some embroidery, redwork embroidery. I'm going to show you today how to do a few basic stitches and give you a few tips so that you can actually do my newest kit or pattern called I Believe in Snowmen. If you look at that, it's sitting right there behind me with all the little redwork blocks. So let's get started. Let's go over what you might need to do this quilt. I like to back my embroidery so that I don't have to use a hoop. I use a Pellon Designer's Light, and it's a real fine fusible interfacing. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to iron this Designer's Light. I'm going to cut it the same size as the background block, which we always cut our blocks a little bit larger, and I'm going to iron this to the back of the block before I even trace it. The patterns that you get are dark enough, if you look at this pattern, that you're going to be able to put that block just on a regular table. You'll be able to put your background fabric and your Designer's Light interfacing right over it and trace right from there. So the first thing you want to do when you're tracing one of our blocks is I've given you a guideline on each block to show you. This is a cutting guideline, a seam guideline. You're going to, when you finish your embroidery, you're going to cut 1/4 inch outside this line. So what you do is you put your block over the drawing. You're going to get your handy dandy ruler and your Clover water erasable marker, and you are simply going to trace that square using that marker. You see how I've done that? You can see right through it. It's easy to trace. And I'm going to trace all 4 sides, and then I'm going to trace inside the drawings. Now, the one thing you want to have when you use this water erasable marker, Clover makes something really good to go with it, and a lot of people don't know about this, but it's the eraser pen. What happens with this eraser pen is if you happen to iron over this, it's still going to remove that marker. Everybody tells me, oh, I can't do the water erasable marker because it doesn't come off if you iron over it, and that's not true. If you use the eraser pen, you can easily just go through and remove those marks when you're done with your embroidery. So 2 things you want to buy. You want to buy the Clover water erasable marker and the eraser pen. The other thing you're going to need is an embroidery needle, and I wanted to show you the difference here. I use Gina Kimball's embroidery needles because she makes a quality needle, and I use a size 11. I wanted to show you, this one right here is a size 8, and this one right here is a size 11. It's much shorter. It's just easier to do tiny stitches with a needle like that than it is with a great big long needle like that. So for this type of embroidery, which is delicate looking and tiny, use a shorter needle, the size 11. Okay, thread, let's see. What can I tell you about thread? When you're embroidering, you're going to pull your thread off the skein, and usually you can see where it comes off. It has a little curve to the end of it. You're going to do that, pull it twice, just like that. So you don't want to go any longer than that. That's approximately 18 inches long. The thing to remember about threading your needle is you want to thread the needle from the end that came off that skein. So I'm not going to thread it from this end. I'm going to thread it from this end. If you start embroidering and your embroidery keeps tangling up, your thread is becoming a mess, pull it to the back, tie it off, and rethread it from the other end, and it'll be much easier. It won't tangle. So what I do is I just tap on the end of that, and I am going to remove 2 strands from this thread. So I take out one at a time. I know it sounds tedious, but it'll make your embroidery look so much better if you do this. There's my second. And I try and lay my thread down so that I can remember which end to thread from. Now I'm just going to put these two side by side. Like that. The reason you do this, the reason you want to strand your floss like this, is because when you do your stitching, these two are now laying right next to each other instead of twisted around each other like they are if you just pull them off that skein by twos. So when you're threading your needle, let's see if I can do this. You're going to give it a little lick. That always helps. Or you can also use something called thread heaven, which we have all these little secrets. Just run it through the end like that. Sticks those ends together and makes it easier to thread. When you're threading your needle, don't go and try, let me see, don't go and try and force that thread through the needle. Instead, bring the needle up to the thread. So, let's see if it works. You see, I'm pushing that needle onto the thread. I'm not pushing the thread into the needle. It's a big difference, and it's going to go through really fast. I guarantee you, you're going to love that. Push the needle onto the thread, not the opposite way. So now I have this nice piece of thread. I'm going to do a little quilter's knot at the end, pull it through, and I am ready to stitch. That's it. So let's, most of my embroidery is really simple. We use a basic stem stitch, a back stitch, a satin stitch, and some French knots. So let me just quickly show you how to do the basic stem stitch, because most of this embroidery is stem stitch. So I'm going to pick it up. I'm not using a hoop because I have the designer's light right behind it. And I'm going to start at one end with the stem stitch. I'm going to start at the end, bring my thread up. I'm going to always keep my thread to the bottom of this line. So I'm holding on to it, and I'm making my first stitch is about 1/4 of an inch, maybe not quite that big, and I'm coming up halfway between where I started. Can you see that? Okay, so that's my first stitch is like that. Then my second stitch now is about 1/8 of an inch away. I'm going down and I'm coming up right where that thread entered. So I've got a very tiny stitch there, and it's going right into where the last part of the thread went down. Let me do one more. And I'm always keeping this thread to the bottom and holding on to it so that it's staying down there. You don't want to pull your embroidery really tight. It's going to sink into the fabric if you do that. So try not to tug and yank on it. Keep your stitches laying on top, keep them neat, and try and keep them as even as possible. Okay, so that right there is your basic stem stitch. It's not hard, it's very easy, and if you practice, you'll get it down really fast. Okay, let me show you how to do a French knot, because everybody's afraid of French knots. Same thing, you're going to thread your needle, you're going to do the quilter's knot at the end. These snowmen have eyes and mouths that are all French knots. So, let's see. You're going to come up right at the center of that knot, of that little dot. Bring your thread up. You're going to grab it right next. I'm going to lay my needle right on top there. Grab it over that, and I'm going to give it 3 wraps. 1, 2, 3. Then I'm going to grab where those wraps were, pull the needle through without letting go. Don't lift up that left thumb. And there's the knot right there. Now the key to this is when you put it right back down next to where you came up, you don't want to pull real hard or your knot's going to sink into that fabric. So you want to leave it about like that. Don't go tugging underneath. It'll sink right in. So now you have a really nice eye. What I do is, every time I do a French knot, now not everybody does this, but I tie it off in the back and I start over again at the next knot, because I don't want to see thread, red thread, underneath here. So I've got a lot of stopping and starting when I'm doing that, but trust me, it's worth it. I just make a tiny little stitch in the back. Take a tiny stitch, I look to make sure it wasn't coming through on top, and then I go through that little loop right there. That's it. One little tie is all it needs, and I'm going to trim both these threads at the same time. So now I have a snowman eye done. And it's cute, and you can't really see any awful threads going underneath. Let's see, what else? A running stitch is used for this part of the star, which this is really simple. You can't go wrong. You're just going to start at the end of one of the lines, and a running stitch, you just go follow that stitch. You just go down and up. It's kind of like a top stitch would be. That, down and up. When I get to the end of that line, I'm going to pull it to the back, and I'm going to come up and start again right there on that side. So at the point, I've taken it to the back, and then I turn it so that I can see where I'm going, and I do it again. Okay, that's your basic running stitch. I think one of the things people are afraid of are the snowman noses, and really, those are the easiest things ever. You're going to do a little tiny back stitch going around that nose. Let me show you the back stitch quickly. Back stitch, you start on the line just before where the end of the line is, because you're going to go back. So here I am, I'm coming up there. I'm going to go back to the end of the line, and then I'm going to go forward about 1/8 of an inch. You see that? Okay, so there I've gone up. The key to the back stitch is to go into the same hole that that stitch was in, where you started, where it came up. And I'm going forward again. So that's the back stitch. You're going to go all the way around that nose with a back stitch, and then you're going to go over that back stitch with a satin stitch. And a satin stitch is really easy. If you look at this, you're going to come up next to that back stitch and go down on the other side of the back stitch. It's just giving you a line to follow, and it's padding it. So there I have pulled that. I'm going up again. And I'm going to go down over there again. And that's the satin stitch for the nose. You can also go lengthwise if the nose is very tiny. You can make your satin stitch run this way instead of this way. It doesn't matter, it just needs to be right next to each other and as smooth as you can get it. So this is the final end result, is you're going to end up with an I Believe in Snowmen quilt that you can hang in your house every season. It's really easy to do. It has a little bit of pieced blocks, a few of those, so that you're going to keep up your piecing skills. Then it has a little, it has quite a few embroidery blocks, but that's so much fun to do. If you like handwork, you're going to love this. And there's no guesswork to it. The pattern tells you exactly what stitch to use in each block, so that you'll know whether you're doing a satin stitch or a stem stitch. And we have diagrams to help you out. Then when you get down to the applique, there's a row of applique at the bottom and a row of applique at the top, so that you still get your applique fill. You know, Bunny Hill is known for applique, so we didn't want to leave that out. And then on the border, you're going to be doing flying geese all the way around. So it's a fun quilt, uses 3 different techniques, so you're not going to get bored, and it's cute. Hope you enjoy it.